The young and the restless spoilers Holden had always been relentless. From the moment he first set eyes on Audra, he pursued her with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Nate, Audra's longtime partner, watched this growing tension with unease. He knew Holden's type, charming one minute, manipulative the next. But Nate believed in Audra's loyalty. He trusted her implicitly, yet he couldn't ignore the subtle cracks that were beginning to form in their relationship. It began with whispered insults. Holden would corner Audra in the hallway outside her office, leaning in close enough that Nate could hear him if he listened hard. "Nate's no prize," he'd murmur, his tone laced with false sympathy. "He's content to let life pass him by while I live with purpose." Audra would stiffen, her jaw clenching. She'd glance around, uneasy, then shake her head and hurry away. But the seed had been planted. Holden's next move was more brazen. He started inviting Audra out for coffee under the pretense of discussing a work project. Nate caught wind of these outings when he saw their matching coffee cups left on Audra's desk, saw the way she laughed a little too brightly when she returned. He felt a flicker of doubt. Still, he reminded himself that Audra loved him. That she would never betray their history together, late-night conversations, shared dreams, the small rituals that had bound them over the years. But as days passed, Nate noticed her distracted air. She would trail off mid-sentence, staring at her phone as if expecting a message. He found a lipstick-stained napkin in the trash. He saw Holden's dark sedan parked outside her building more often than seemed coincidental. Each discovery pricked at Nate's confidence, leaving him unsettled. He wanted to confront Holden directly, but something held him back, an unwillingness to believe that Audra might falter. One evening, Nate arrived home earlier than usual. He found Audra at the kitchen table, the warm glow of the overhead light haloing her hair. She looked up at him, startled. On the table lay 2 coffees, one for her, one for someone who wasn't Nate. His heart thumped. "Who's that for?" he asked, his voice steady but his chest tightening. Audra hesitated. She set down her cup, her fingers lingering on the rim. "Holden," she admitted softly. He wanted to talk." "About what?" Nate's voice cracked, betraying the calm he tried to maintain. "He says he loves me," she said, her eyes flicking away. "He thinks I should be with someone who truly appreciates me. Someone exciting." Nate closed his eyes. He felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The Audra he knew, strong, kind, unwavering, was wavering. And the man who'd sown these doubts, Holden, stood to benefit. Yet, even in that moment of pain, Nate's faith in Audra endured. "You're mine," he said quietly, reaching across the table. "I love you. I always have." Audra's gaze softened, and she reached back. But the damage was done. The fragile trust between them had been tested. Over the next few days, Nate steeled himself. He couldn't let Holden continue to undermine their relationship. Audra needed to know he would fight for her honor, and for himself. He rehearsed what he would say, how he would confront Holden. He wanted clarity, an end to this manipulation. The confrontation happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Nate arrived at the cafe where Holden had arranged to meet Audra. He spotted Holden at a corner table, casually reading a newspaper, oblivious to Nate's approach. Audra wasn't there, presumably held up at work, but Nate didn't care. He slid into the seat across from Holden without knocking. Holden looked up, startled. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Nate. Didn't expect you." "I expect a lot from you," Nate said, voice low. "I expect you to stay away from Audra." Holden chuckled, folding his newspaper. "Stay away? I have every right to pursue the woman I love. No one can stop me." Nate leaned forward, fists clenched on the table. "You've been playing games. Talking badly about me behind my back. Trying to turn her against me. It ends now." Holden's smile faded. He stood, towering over Nate. You think you can dictate my life? You think you own her heart? Nate rose to meet him. I don't own her heart. But I love her, and I won't let you trample over what we have. Anger flashed in Holden's eyes. He took a step forward. Then prove it. In an instant, Nate's restraint snapped. He lashed out, delivering a sharp punch that connected squarely with Holden's jaw. The cafe fell silent. Cups rattled on saucers. Holden staggered back, stunned, his hand flying to his cheek. Nate's chest heaved. The adrenaline rush was overwhelming. He looked around, realizing the eyes of every patron were on him. He had crossed a line, but the humiliation he'd endured was now returned tenfold. From behind him came a soft but firm voice, "Stop it, Nate. Please." Audra stepped into view, her expression torn between relief and horror. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "This isn't you. Please, let's go." Nate's anger drained away. He exhaled shakily, nodding. "You're right." He turned to Holden, who glared at him with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "This isn't over," Holden spat. "You'll regret this." Nate didn't respond. He allowed Audra to guide him out of the cafe. Outside, the rain had eased to a light drizzle. Audra wrapped her arms around him, her warmth reminding him of what truly mattered. He closed his eyes against her shoulder, the remnants of rage ebbing into sorrow. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I lost control." Audra stroked his hair. "I know. I love you. But we have to find another way to handle him." Nate pulled back, looking into her eyes. I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed him to know I wouldn't be pushed aside." Audra nodded, pressing a kiss to his temple. "We'll face him together. But without violence." Nate squared his shoulders. "Together." He took her hand, and they walked away from the cafe, side by side. Behind them, through the cafe window, Holden watched. His cheek was already reddening, and a dark shadow passed over his features. Nate had struck first, but Holden would not forget this blow. A slow, cold resolve settled in his eyes. He would have his revenge, and he would stop at nothing to make Nate pay. As Nate and Audra disappeared into the rain, the stage was set for a deeper conflict, one fueled by pride, passion, and the fear of losing everything they held dear. And neither man would emerge from this unscathed. Audra's hand trembled as she stared at her phone's screen. She knew she had to call Holden, had to try to smooth things over before his anger consumed them both. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a moment longer than necessary, then she pressed. "Holden?" Her voice was quiet, apologetic. There was a long pause on the other end. Then his low, controlled voice, "Audra." "I'm sorry," she began, her words rushing out. "For what happened in the cafe. I never meant for things to get so violent. I shouldn't have let Nate drag me into his anger." Holden inhaled sharply. "You didn't have to apologize to me," he said. "You were defending yourself." Audra closed her eyes. "But it shouldn't have happened. I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." She could almost hear the skepticism in his breath. "You mean you're going back to Nate?" Audra hesitated. In truth, she felt torn. Nate's fierce protectiveness had once been one of the things she loved most about him, his unwillingness to let anyone disrespect her. But in that moment, as she watched Holden nurse his bruised jaw, she'd felt an unexpected pang of guilt. She paused, searching for words. "I need time to think. But I promise you this. I won't let my life spiral into more chaos." Another pause. Then, almost softly, "I hope you keep that promise." She hung up before he could reply again. Standing alone in her apartment, Audra pressed her back against the door and slid down until she was seated on the floor. Her mind raced. She had just pledged to Holden that she wouldn't let things spiral, but what did that even mean? On one hand, she felt guilty that Nate had taken a punch for her, guilty that Holden was out there, wounded and furious. On the other, a small, defiant voice inside her whispered that neither man truly owned her allegiance. Because there was another player in this dangerous game, Kyle. Kyle Abbott, the charming, loyal Abbott's son who'd once been Nate's friend, had recently re-entered Audra's life under the guise of helping her with a charitable project. His warm smile and steady presence had felt like a balm to her frayed nerves. Unlike Nate, who so often lost himself in jealousy, and unlike Holden, whose intensity teetered on obsession, Kyle seemed safe. Dependable. And then there was Victor Newman. The man who held more power in Genoa City than anyone else. Audra had been drawn into Victor's orbit through work. Her marketing firm had taken on a high-stakes campaign for Newman Enterprises. Victor was notoriously demanding, but also strangely respectful of her intelligence. Over late-night strategy sessions and boardroom showdowns, she'd come to appreciate his strategic mind, and he'd come to trust her judgment. Neither Kyle nor Victor had made romantic advances. Their interest in her was strictly professional, at least on the surface. But Audra sensed opportunity. If she aligned herself with Kyle, she would gain an ally with both business savvy and the Abbott family's resources. If she cemented her relationship with Victor, she'd secure protection and perhaps more influence within the most powerful family in Genoa City. In that moment of clarity, Audra realized she was not wavering between Nate and Holden. She was charting her own course, and both men were peripheral to her true ambitions. Meanwhile, Nate's own turmoil was far from over. He paced his apartment, replaying every detail of Audra's behavior over the past weeks. Her late-night texts, her distant gazes, the lipstick-stained napkin. He had to know the truth. He grabbed his jacket and keys. He would investigate Audra's movements. He would find out once and for all if she was betraying him, or if he was simply losing his grip on a relationship that had once been unshakable. His first stop was Audra's office. He arrived late in the afternoon, when most of her colleagues had left for the day. The receptionist looked startled to see him. "I need to see Miss Buchanan," Nate said, using Audra's maiden name. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harper," the receptionist replied, "but she left a few hours ago." Nate's heart sank, exactly as he'd expected. But he noticed something on Audra's desk, an open folder labeled Newman Enterprises, Q2 Strategy. He slipped it into his bag before the receptionist could protest. Next, Nate drove to Kyle's loft. He'd caught wind that Audra had been spending time there. Kyle greeted him at the door, concern etched on his face. "Hey, Nate," Kyle said. "Is everything okay?" Nate studied him. "Where's Audra?" Kyle's brow furrowed. "She had to head out. Something came up with Victor's team. I'm not sure exactly what." Nate's suspicion deepened. He'd heard the name Newman Enterprises before. "Victor?" Kyle hesitated. "Yeah. She's consulting on a new campaign." Nate felt a surge of anger. Audra had never mentioned this to him. He gripped Kyle's arm. "Is there something going on between you two?" Kyle pulled back, startled. "What?" "No. Audra and I are just friends, working friends." But Nate wasn't convinced. He left Kyle's loft with more questions than answers. Back at home, Nate spread the documents from Newman Enterprises across his coffee table. He skimmed through quarterly reports, marketing plans, budget forecasts. Audra's fingerprints were all over them. He found email chains between her and Victor himself, late-night messages, strategic insights, even a couple of thank-you notes that seemed personal. Was she really just a consultant? Or had she begun to build a deeper alliance with the Newman Empire, one that could redefine her career and, potentially, her loyalties? Nate's mind spun. He thought of the punch he'd landed on Holden's jaw, the tears in Audra's eyes when she stopped him. He thought of the phone call to Holden, her apology, her promise. Now, he wasn't sure whom she was protecting. But one thing was clear, Nate would not let himself be the victim of her ambitions. He would follow every lead, question every ally, until he uncovered the truth. And if Audra truly was betraying him, if her heart and her plans lay elsewhere, then he would demand justice. Because Nate Harper never backed down from a fight. And this time, the battlefield was his own life. The game has shifted. Audra stands at a crossroads, her loyalties hidden beneath layers of professional ambition and personal desire. Nate has begun his investigation, determined to root out any betrayal. And Holden, nursing his wounded pride, will not rest until he exacts revenge on the man who struck him. In Genoa City, power plays and love triangles are never simple, and the next moves by each of these players will determine who emerges triumphant and who loses everything.